Okay, good morning all. So I'm going to do a real quick demo of my first Ignition project that I have ever built. Here you go. For those of you who are interested, the zip file for the project can be found in my repo, and for those of you who want to take a closer look at everything that's going on in there, because we will not be covering everything in this video, it will simply take too long, there's too much information and too much stuff to cover, but that's okay. So a general disclaimer, this is my first ever Ignition project that I built, so the code is too tightly coupled, and some best practices were followed and others were not. Some of them I was not aware how they worked with Ignition and just in general with the system, but that's okay. And more generally, this project was created to fill an OSHA regulation, that of working alone for extended periods of time, but I digress. So to begin my walkthrough, I will briefly cover this admin page that you can see right here, and then we will talk about Perspective and its Java service wrapper and all that fun stuff. The Vision project has only access by a specific type of admin. So in this system there are two types of admins, the high admin and the base admin. Like I said, only the high admin has access to this. It's mostly because these buttons are incredibly powerful for what they allow you to do, and so you have to restrict them. So let's start with the admin user button, and then we'll talk about what these other three do. So if we wanted to just make a new base user for whoever it was, in this case some gentleman named Bob He, we want to fill in all this information for him, and then we need to make him a company, so we'll call it this. Right? And as you can see, it populates down here with this company role and this admin role that you can't unselect because these roles are going to be appended to this account as you create it. Save, and now there's been a new base user that has been created. So if we go to the designer, you can see this company. There's Bob He with all of his user tag with the alarms that are all scripted in and whatnot. But then we can come back to these buttons. Bob He is not a higher admin, so he will not have access to this project. But if he wants to access the Perspective project, he has to have the status role. And so the status role determines whether or not you have access to the system, like the Perspective system. And so if you remove the role and you try to log in, you'll see that he is forbidden because he does not have the roles required to access it, which is specifically just the status role. So sign out, come back over here, we'll add it back to him so I don't forget. The admin role, this functionality exists to add any role that exists in the system to any user. Mostly this button exists to add multiple admins to a single company, because when we talk about the Perspective project, we'll briefly talk about the admin page first, but the admin page is what a base admin has access to in the Perspective project that allows them to add other users for their company instance. But you could do other things, but that's mostly what this exists for. And then admin clean is kind of an end-of-life catch-all system where after a company has been away for a while and they have no intention of using the system anymore, you can simply remove the tags, roles, and users associated with that specific company just to clean up space. You can select rather any you want, but we won't do that because it'll clear all the stuff out. You see, now we have access. So I'm definitely no CSS whiz yet. I did enjoy the way that Ignition has it all set up for their system, but I thought it looked fairly decent for what it was, but we're just not going to talk too much about the design choices here. So, coming into this page, this is technically something only accessible by the base admin like we talked about before, but it makes the rest of the project make a lot more sense if we talk about it first. So if we go and we add a user, doesn't matter what it is, which FF, sure. Just fill in all this information. But mostly the part that makes it make more sense is these roles, because these roles determine a lot of other important information. So emergency contact 1, 2, or 3 is related directly to the alarm pipeline. So when a user doesn't acknowledge their timer alarm, at the proper time, it'll start an escalating pipeline, obviously going from the current logged in user all the way up to the third emergency contact, and then possibly the manager, more other options that you can come up with. And then the report receiver is at the end of the session. When you click the end button, which I'll show you brief in a moment here, it will send a report off to whoever has the report receiver role, and so that can be helpful to explain the other page. So we'll save this. So now that we have Mr. FF, whoever FF is, you can come in and you can update the user, and you can change any of this information that it had before. Specifically, mostly it'll end up being the roles, but you can also edit the password if for whatever reason the user makes a boo-boo. Yeah, nothing crazy over there. And then if you want to delete a user, it will go in and you can select from this drop-down menu, and then you can select whatever one is highlighted and you can remove it. But as you can see, when you create a new user, it also is populated in the user tags, in this case the base tag hierarchy. And if you go into the actual tag, it will show you all of the alarms that are scripted in via the button. So you can, and then these will escalate or low time check depending on which instance you find yourself in for this timer, which I will show you. So if we go back to the project again, this is the home page. This is the main drop center for every user in the system. This page contains information about general status information of the current specific logged in user. So you're authenticated as Bob He, you're currently inactive, and your tracking is inactive because you're not running a session. Alright, so if you go and you start a session, you have the ability to either allow access or deny access. We're going to deny for right now. But if you allow, it'll change this permissions to active, and then you can see a map of where you currently are. But we're going to just put it as not for right now. So then you can fill this section in, and as you can see, as you're typing, it will move down, which was kind of a fun little one. And you save, and you're able to edit the notes again as you're kind of moving along. Or you can refresh or end the session. Refreshing will simply update this timer, and ending will, like we said before, it will take all the current information from your report and send it to the report receiver, which we will talk about momentarily. So this map is a satellite template provided by Leaflet. So if we scroll out a little bit, you can see you get a nice satellite view of wherever it is you're going, but obviously we just have it set to nothing right now. And you also have the ability to select what level of tracking it is you're interested in, between max and low. Go into report. So as you're going through your session while it's active and has longitude and latitude values to record, all of those longitude and latitude values will be recorded as the session progresses. And so it'll maintain the timestamp, the user ID, whatever yours happens to be, and the longitude and latitude. And because of the way it's set up, and also depending on the depth of your database, you can create other reports that have been generated before to get a general feel of where that person is spending their time, or if you're trying to find somebody, you can punch that information in, because as a base admin, you have the ability to flip between different users, as you can see. Whereas if we were authenticated as this FF, whoever that happens to be, you can't flip between this drop-down menu unless, of course, FF is also a base admin. And then the user tab is of interest because you can edit just base information mostly, but the email and SMS are the two that are important, because when you talk about the email or the SMS, this is how you're contacted when your timer runs low, depending on what you have set up for a notification system. That's important to have set up properly, and obviously that's something helpful the user can have set up on their own. But if we come back here for just a brief moment, I said we were going to talk about the alarm pipeline. And so the alarm pipeline, if we go into the designer, we'll just look at call alarm, because this is the escalating one. So the first one will simply just call the current user, and it's all calculated, it's all scripted. It has some abstraction in here because this is how you just general getters and setters and things like that. But it needs a little bit of help because some of this is a little more hard coded than it should be. Specifically, these named queries, I'm not sure how to do those better. But as you move up through the escalation pipeline, you'll see that the people that are getting called have to have specific roles. So in this instance, emergency contact 1 and also be in the company. So you have to have the same company name as whoever it is you're trying to contact. And that will continue to move up and move up and move up. And that is entirely dependent upon
you have
the
start time, current,
timestamp that exists
whether or not
in the
user
database
is logged in, and what the set point is. And so basically, to give you the 1,000-foot view of this, the set point determines how long they have and how long the difference between the end time and the start time will be. And then that will trigger this.
The set point determines how long they have and how
When
long.
you
Start a new session, you can see that the timestamping in the database that determines whether or not you need to be called by the system. And so obviously there's always more we could talk about with these kinds of things, but that is more or less the very brief overview. Interested in looking further into whatever is of interest to you in this project, the zip file will be in my repo. And yeah, thank you for enjoying my demo. Bye bye.